we went into Akuma's vast adventures with the X-Men. Came full circle. Akuma got his ass kicked, or I'm sorry, whooped the shit out of Magneto and everybody back in Children of the Atom. X-Men stood no chance against Akuma back in 1994. 2 years have passed, and Akuma and Magneto are now shaking hands. They're best friends in X-Men versus Street Fighter. Well, maybe not best friends, because Akuma x Wolverine is a thing. Akuma and Wolverine work very well together in almost every single game they'll be in from this point forward. But X-Men versus Street Fighter happens, 1996. And believe it or not, Akuma's in the game. And we all knew that. Or did you? Because he's a hidden character again! So, Akuma's a secret character, so where is he? Oh, he's right there. Lips and all. Albeit, he is the least effort hidden character ever. I remember seeing the first time we were playing the game, and it was like, oh, how did you pick Akuma? Thinking that, you know, some guy did some crazy code or something like that. And then the dudes that were in front of me jump off the machine in 1996, and I jump on and I'm like, wait, how did he pick Akuma? And I just scrolled up and bam, there he is. He is quite literally a hidden box right above everything. X-Men vs. Street Fighter is a game that is full of a lot of hilarity, and we've spoken about it a few times before, and it would be great at some point later on to really dive into this game and figure out what makes it tick. But X-Men vs. Street Fighter is a game that is 3 games. It is not just one game. It's a game that has 3 massive updates to it. And these updates essentially try to tame the game down, because X-Men vs. Street Fighter is a game of notorious corner infinites for the majority of the roster. Almost every single character has wild infinites throughout. The game is bonkers. And even to the point where we compare it to previous games like Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, yeah, dude, there's just so much crazy, wild shit in this game that is fun, but you can immediately tell based on the way that certain air combos act in the corner, oh, is this version of the game? And the last version of the game, really, they try to take a lot of them out. But yeah, you can set up for combos in the corner with Akuma. Most of the Shotos have pretty similar corner infinites. Most characters in the game have pretty easy corner infinites, all things considered. So they're fun, you know? It's like my favorite version of the game is the ones that are like kind of messed up. You know, even if you land an Akuma corner infinite or something, there's sort of an unspoken rule that goes around Fightcade and a lot of people that play the shit out of these games that you get like 3 loops. You know, because ultimately these combos don't do a ton of damage. When you do eventually land an infinite with a character, they don't do a ton of damage, but you stop your combo at, I believe, 3 loops, which gives you a decent amount of meter, takes away a decent amount of health from them, but isn't like you're just watching a combo for 90 seconds, because yes, as that combo continues in these old games, you're doing so little damage. It's like beep, 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 and you're like, bro, just kill me. And I kind of appreciate that. The thing I also really appreciate about X-Men vs. Street Fighter is just how amazing to look at it is. Like, alongside the X-Men characters, the color palette of the game is such a gorgeous, beautiful game. And Akuma, on top of all of it, gets a lot of pretty interesting stuff. He loses Demon Flip. He gets Dive Kick, which is generally pretty good. He gets Air Fireball, which is pretty good. But the highlight of the character in X-Men vs. Street Fighter, in my opinion, 1 bar Raging Demon. You get to do Raging Demon for 1 effing bar, dude. And it causes a hard knockdown after, so you get a combo after Raging Demon, which is insanely good for 1 bar. Oh, and you can also combo into an inescapable Raging Demon after the off the ground combo. It's disgusting. It's crazy good. Akuma's a lot of fun in this game. And I feel like subsequent versions, he loses a little bit of that fun because, you know, they really try to give him some secret character sauce, even though he is a core part of the roster, albeit outside of the main characters. After this, we head on over to Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. And for those that are unaware, this is, in my opinion, one of the lowest efforts Capcom sort of puts into one of their games. It comes out insanely quick. Like, after X-Men vs. Street Fighter, this was like 6 to 8 months later. And all it really is a hyper rebalance and retooled asset flip of a lot of stuff from previous games. So we just get characters back from Children of the Atom and some previous titles. Akuma is now on the main roster next to Ryu, Ken, and Dan. There's like 4 Shotos in this game on the main roster, but most of it is just flipping assets from X-Men vs. Street Fighter and Marvel Superheroes and games that came before it. And Akuma in this one, even though you get access to assists now, is all right. You know, it's okay. It's sort of like you feel the bones of what was really fun about X-Men vs. Street Fighter, but the combo potential just isn't really there. There is infinites, and we spent time figuring out how to do them, but they are very difficult. They are significantly harder to do in the same way that MVC 1 would follow, where the corner infinites are much more specific on the timing of how the off the ground acts and what you can do after. But Akuma in this game is relatively cool. He's a normal character now, so he doesn't really get any bonuses like he would as a secret character from before. The highlight of Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, outside of its wonderful presentation and announcer and everything like that, is that the last boss of the game is also an asset flip. It's not Apocalypse anymore. Apocalypse is the sub-boss. The last boss of the game, as we are aware from the Street Fighter 6 trailers, and also if you played Street Fighter 5, is Cyber Akuma, aka Mecha Goki. And because the game didn't have much of a budget, they're just like, let's just slap some robot parts and some wings on this dude, get him rocket punch, and turn him into some crazy asshole final boss. And that's what he is. He's some crazy dickhead asshole final boss. He's notorious. I'd argue it's sleazy and lame, and you could have given us another giant boss or something like that, but for some reason, Cyber Akuma always resonated with me as being this really sick version of Akuma. He's goofy as shit looking, but a really sick version of Akuma at the end of the game where it's just like, what the hell? What if Akuma got Marvelized in some way? And yeah, he turned into like a robot version of Akuma. So I have a little bit of an appreciation for it, you know, and I think it's kind of sick that the game supports it. We played on a hacked version of the game. So, you know, that means that you can play as Cyber Akuma on a hacked version of the arcade game, allowing you to have Akuma and Cyber Akuma on the same team, which is fairly exciting. So yeah, you get to, you know, demon people like crazy, and Cyber Akuma is legit insane. He doesn't make any sense. He's a boss character, and he's not designed to be played. He is literally only playable from a modification. Outside of that, I wanted to dabble a little bit more into the Akuma legacy, but a bit of a side story, because Marvel vs. Capcom 1 does not have Akuma. We don't technically get Akuma back in the Versus series until the year 2000 with MVC 2, and Akuma comes back in that game, and he's actually the best Shoto by a long shot. He's fairly decent in MVC 2. So we'll be back to see what he's like in the Versus series, but Akuma is technically around in Marvel vs. Capcom 1. And I love reminding people that this exists or showing them for the first time. Ryu has a unique ability in MVC 1 where if he does half circle back medium punch, he turns into Ken. Sorta, he has like a Ken costume. And if you do half circle back heavy punch, you turn into Akuma. And if you do half circle back light punch, you can turn back into Ryu. All of these cost 1 bar, but you start off in MVC 1 with 1 bar. So at the beginning of the round, you can use your bar and turn into Akuma. Sick! You get like Raging Demon and everything, dude. All right, let's go, Ryu. Zippin'. That guy's dead. I've always thought this was one of the craziest aspects of Ryu. It's one of the coolest things that he can do in all of the Versus series, to be honest. It was neat that he gets like Denjin mode activation in previous and follow-up Versus games, like in Marvel 3. I think that stuff is cool, but bro, this guy being able to turn into Akuma is the sickest shit. And it is still one of my favorite goddamn things about Marvel vs. Capcom 1 is that Ryu has the ability to transform into Akuma, much less Ken. Speaking and on a final note, and we messed around with it at the end of playing these games, and I was just interested in trying shit. Speaking of transforming into Akuma, follow me here. If Rogue grabs Akuma and kisses him, she gains his powers in X-Men vs. Street Fighter. And in X-Men vs. Street Fighter, because the roster wasn't massive, you get really unique abilities. Rogue gets like Optic Blast if she smooches Cyclops. If she smooches Akuma, you get Air Fireballs. Dope. But you also get Rogue Raging Demon. Rogue gets the ability to Raging Demon you, which is definitely something unique. And even if you land the Raging Demon, you can follow it up with an OTG combo into even more stuff. So again, you know, Akuma's lingering around and his influence is now being permeating throughout many other elements of Capcom fighting games. And this isn't even including the other games he's in right around this time frame, because we're covering a few games here, like the middle of the Versus series. So there's a lot more to Akuma around this time frame that we're going to check out, because again, this guy takes some side stories and some unique trips to the land of the super deformed pocket fighter, and he also turns into a kaiju mecha robot. Get ready, it's about to get even more wild.